Welcome to Limitless Discipline, where excuses die and real transformation begins. Today, we're bringing you the raw, no-nonsense mindset of Dr. Mike Israetel. A voice that doesn't sugarcoat the truth, because what's holding you back isn't a lack of motivation, it's a lack of structure, grit, and relentless execution. Abs aren't for the motivated, they're for the ruthless. This isn't about hype, it's about habits. It's about pushing past comfort and becoming the kind of person who doesn't wait for the perfect moment, but builds results through daily, ruthless discipline. If you're tired of starting over, if you're done playing small, if you're ready to flip the switch, this video is your wake-up call. There's no shortcut. There's only repetition, sacrifice, and consistency. And if that scares you, good, because it should. No fluff, no mercy, just the truth. Let's dive in. Motivation feels good. It gives you energy. It lifts you up for a moment. But if all it took to get abs was a spark of motivation, everyone would have them. Everyone who watched a fitness video, everyone who scrolled through social media and whispered, "I'm starting tomorrow." Everyone who promised themselves on a Sunday night that Monday would be different, they'd all be shredded, but they're not. Because what motivation starts, comfort finishes. And comfort always wins when you depend on feelings. It whispers to you, tells you to relax, tells you that you've done enough, that one skipped workout won't hurt. It tells you to eat what you crave, to rest today and push tomorrow. That voice never shouts. It persuades softly. It lures with ease. And that's why motivation is not the weapon you think it is. When you rely on motivation, you're setting yourself up to fall. You're depending on something external to drive something internal. You're waiting to feel right before you act. But abs don't care how you feel. They're not interested in your emotions. They are built through a mindset that doesn't seek permission. A mindset that acts despite the weather, the sleep, the hunger, the stress. That mindset is not motivated, it's ruthless. Ruthlessness is the engine that runs even when the tank is empty. It's the switch you flip when motivation runs out, when inspiration disappears, when the crowd goes home and it's just you in silence. That's when you separate the average from the exceptional. That's when the winners make their move. Because they don't chase the feeling, they chase the result. Think about how many people start strong. They post their workouts, they show their meal prep, they talk big, but a few weeks later, they're gone, ghosted their goals. Because the motivation wore off, the initial rush faded, the soreness kicked in, the scale didn't move, the progress was slow, and they started questioning everything. The ruthless don't ask those questions. They don't need a reason. They don't need excitement. They just execute. They live in the grind. They expect the resistance. They welcome it. Because every rep, every clean bite, every drop of sweat is proof that they're becoming unbreakable. It's not about hype. It's about hunger. Not the physical kind, but the kind that eats excuses for fuel. That kind of hunger is rare because it's earned through repetition, through boredom, through discipline that doesn't bend. You see, motivation loves the beginning. It loves the pump, the playlist, the selfies. But abs are born in the days you don't post, in the moments when no one is cheering, when no one notices, when everything feels pointless, but you keep going anyway. That's the test. That's the line. The ruthless cross it daily. And not because it's fun, but because they're loyal to their standards. They said they were going to be shredded, and that declaration is now law. They don't renegotiate. They don't justify, they don't delay. They commit, then they execute, then they repeat. It's not glamorous, it's gritty, it's not Instagram, it's isolation. But that's where the transformation happens. Every six-pack you admire, every lean physique that turns heads, was carved by someone who mastered monotony. They didn't quit when it got boring. They didn't ease up when it got hard. They didn't look around to see what others were doing. They locked in. And locking in means sacrificing. It means turning down the food that others say is just one bite. It means saying no to social plans. It means being misunderstood. Because most people won't get it. They'll say you're obsessed. They'll say you're extreme, but you'll smile because you know that being misunderstood is the cost of being elite. And elite is what it takes. Because abs aren't about genetics. They're about refusal. Refusal to be average. Refusal to cave to cravings. Refusal to coast. They're about waking up when your body says sleep, training when your mind says rest, and pushing through walls that used to stop you. That level of focus doesn't come from motivation. It comes from decision. A decision to become someone who doesn't miss, someone who doesn't complain, someone who doesn't look for reasons to quit. The world is full of people who almost had it, who almost made it, who almost stuck to the plan, but almost never built abs, almost never became unstoppable. That belongs to the few who go all in. There's no shortcut, no hack, no three-step plan that replaces consistency. It's not about what you do once, it's about what you do always. It's about the meals you measure, the sleep you prioritize, the water you drink, the cardio you finish when you want to collapse. It's 1,000 small wins no one will see. But each one is a deposit. And those deposits compound. Slowly, quietly, relentlessly, until one day you take off your shirt and everything changes. People will think it happened overnight, but you'll know. You'll know about the days it didn't make sense, the days your body fought back, the days you doubted everything, but didn't break. That's the reward. Not just the abs, but who you became getting them. Because at some point, your mind will try to talk you out of it. It will say, you've done enough. It will ask, what's the point? It will remind you of the easier path. But ruthlessness doesn't negotiate. It doesn't entertain weakness. It doesn't care about comfort. It only cares about completion. You said you would get lean. You said you would reach single digits. You said you would build that body. Then nothing else matters. Not opinions, not obstacles, not emotions, just action. That's what the ruthless understand. That doing it tired still counts. That doing it angry still works. That showing up messy is better than skipping perfect. That consistency isn't about how you feel. It's about who you are. And when you become that person, everything changes. Not just your body, your identity. You're no longer chasing the result. You're operating at the level required. And that changes your posture, your energy, your presence. Because now you walk into rooms knowing you did what most people couldn't. You went through the fire and didn't flinch. You stayed the course when it wasn't fun. You kept promises to yourself when it would have been easier to break them. That creates confidence no one can fake. That builds discipline no one can teach. And that, more than anything, is what separates the ruthless from the rest. It's not a trait you're born with. It's a muscle you build. One decision at a time. You skip the junk food today. You train when you're sore. You go to sleep instead of scrolling. You pack your meals instead of guessing. You track what you eat even when you don't want to see the numbers. You take full ownership. You stop blaming time, work, stress, or family. You stop looking for motivation. You just do what's required. That mindset builds abs. That mindset builds greatness. The people with abs didn't find the perfect plan. They became the kind of person who doesn't miss. And that person is ruthless. Because to get there, you have to break your patterns. You have to kill old habits. You have to become immune to average. You have to stop giving in every time it gets tough. You have to stop restarting. Stop making excuses. Stop looking for balance when you need obsession. Because balance is what they sell to make mediocrity sound wise. Obsession is what it takes when you're going against the grain. Everywhere you go, you'll be surrounded by average. People who justify quitting. People who hide behind it's not that serious. People who tell themselves they're working hard, but deep down they know they're cutting corners. You'll hear it constantly. You only live once. Enjoy life. Don't be so strict. But what they call strict, you call standard. What they call obsessive, you call committed. Because once you've tasted discipline, chaos becomes disgusting. Once you've seen what consistency can do, you'll never want to go back to guessing. You'll want control. You'll want structure. You'll want that feeling of knowing you're unstoppable. And you will be. Because once you've lived ruthless, you'll never need motivation again. You'll be able to train without hype, to eat clean without applause, to improve daily without recognition. And that's power. That's self-mastery. That's what real results are built on. Not the sprints, not the trends, but the ruthless commitment to doing the right thing long after the feeling has left. That's how abs are built. That's how warriors are made. That's why motivation will never be enough. It starts the journey, but only ruthlessness can finish it. You stopped craving attention. You stopped performing for eyes that wouldn't understand. Your reason evolved. It wasn't about showing anyone. It wasn't about applause. It became about sharpening yourself. There was a moment when it clicked. This wasn't about reward anymore. It was about who you refused to be. That older version, full of hesitation, driven by whims, always needing a reason, that person is dead now. What replaced it? Precision, relentlessness, a code. You no longer count days, you count executions. Others count macros when it suits them, you count them when it's inconvenient. Others take rest days whenever it feels tough. You rest when it aligns with purpose, not a second sooner. Because this is war. A silent, internal, never-ending war between who you are and who you could be. Every day you wake up, you're under siege from distractions, from cravings, from moments that beg you to compromise. It starts with a subtle suggestion, just this once. That phrase destroys progress faster than anything. Just this once leads to once more. Once more becomes often. Often becomes default, and then it's over. Everything you built begins to rot, all because of one undisciplined thought. You know this now, so you respond differently. You counter it. You replace just this once with never again. You leave no room for maybe. You've burned the exit doors. This isn't seasonal. It's not experimental. It's permanent. Most people try to get away with the minimum. The bare essential. They want transformation on a discount. They want to keep their favorite habits and still reach elite form. But nothing exceptional comes from bargain effort. You want definition. You want symmetry. You want that armor wrapped around your core like a monument to everything you've endured. Then every single action needs to be engineered. Every bite matters. Every plate lifted counts. You don't get to coast. There are no casual victories here. There are only intentional wins. You no longer eat for enjoyment, you feed for outcome. Taste has taken a backseat to meals are data. Everything you consume is weighed, measured, calculated, aligned. You aren't moved by convenience anymore. Convenience breeds softness. You aren't soft. You aren't swayed by comfort. Comfort is your enemy now. You hunt discomfort. You chase suffering because suffering strips away the unnecessary. It sharpens clarity. Every time you choose difficult, you earn sharpness. Every time you delay gratification, you gain leverage. Nobody hands you a sculpted frame. No coach, no program, no supplement can give you what you haven't paid for in full. And the price is everything. Time, sleep, energy, even relationships sometimes. This level of change costs you dearly. And still, you pay, willingly, because the price of staying the same is far worse. That cost? Regret. You've tasted regret before. It's acidic. It leaves a mark that takes years to erase. This process? It burns too. But this burn builds. This burn transforms. This burn gives back. There are no off days. You can lie to yourself and say rest is part of the grind, but you know the difference between strategic and lazy. You know when you're lying to yourself. That voice never really leaves, it just changes tone. When you skip a meal or a workout, it whispers, it's okay, one time doesn't matter. But it always matters. Every rep you skip writes a sentence into your future, and every rep you finish writes a different one. This is authorship. You are writing your legacy one repetition at a time. This level of structure isn't for everyone. Most won't survive it. They'll try to drag you back into normal. They'll try to feed you mediocrity disguised as self-care. They'll hand you excuses packaged as self-love. But you don't listen anymore. You've developed a filter. Anything that threatens the standard gets rejected instantly. You don't entertain weakness. You don't sit in circles where people justify quitting. You've got no tolerance for that kind of talk. Because this lifestyle, it requires isolation. Not forever, but for long enough to break the old pattern. For long enough to eliminate softness. For long enough to become untouchable. And you are. You've stepped into another level, where decisions aren't guided by mood but by commitment, where action isn't based on how you feel but who you are. You are structured. You are exact. You've removed flexibility where none belongs. You don't dabble. You don't experiment. You master. And mastery requires repetition under pressure. Anyone can show up once. Anyone can train when it's exciting. But doing it when it's dull, when it's painful, when nothing seems to move, that's where the change begins. That's where you separate yourself. You've learned to see time differently, not as a luxury, but as a resource that expires. Every hour you waste is one less hour of potential execution, one less hour of sculpting, one less hour of progress. You're no longer operating in weeks or months. You're counting opportunity, micro wins, gains that others ignore because they're not dramatic. But you know that the dramatic comes from the microscopic. The visible comes from the invisible. This path doesn't reward intensity alone. It rewards consistency. It rewards systems. The rituals you repeat without failure, even when no one claps, even when no one sees it. That's the currency here. Silent, brutal consistency. You train when others sleep. You track when others guess. You eat when others snack. You measure when others indulge. You resist when others surrender. And you do this not to prove anything to anyone else. You do it because you've tasted the alternative and it disgusted you. You've dismantled every weak narrative that ever lived in your head. The one that said, I'm too tired. The one that said, I've done enough for today. The one that said, I deserve a break. You murdered those voices. And in their place, you built a machine, a system that doesn't require hype, a framework that doesn't ask for inspiration. You don't need morning quotes. You don't need pre-workout motivation. You just need a mirror, a calendar, and the will to refuse compromise. Every moment of sacrifice becomes a memory you carry like armor. You walk into rooms differently. People notice, not just the frame, but the energy. They don't know why, but they feel it. The way you move, the way you sit, the way you walk. You've got command because you've done the work. Not the flashy kind, the kind that leaves you alone on a bench at 5 a.m., the kind that makes your stomach growl when everyone else is full, the kind that stings when you smell food you used to love. But keep walking anyway. People won't understand the decisions you make. They'll question your intensity. They'll challenge your commitment. They'll joke about it, laugh at it, until the results show up. Then it shifts. Then they ask for your plan. But they don't want the plan. They want the results without the pain. They want the body without the behavior. And that's impossible because this outcome is a reflection of standards no one sees, a mirror of 1,000 tiny refusals. You don't chase motivation, you pursue execution. Every day, every hour. You don't flinch when routines tighten. You don't budge when cravings scream. You respond with action. You don't get caught up in hype or fear or doubt. You stay robotic, sharp, intentional. Not because you were born with discipline, but because you buried the version of yourself who didn't have it. And now, there's no turning back. You've developed a rhythm, a pulse. You've wired your system to respond with execution, the way most respond with excuses. You crave structure now. You crave control. You no longer want freedom to choose anything. You want control to choose the right thing. Over and over. That's the level. That's the place where real transformation occurs. Not everyone will get there. Most don't want it bad enough. They say they do, but their choices betray them. Their habits reveal them. Your habits expose something else. Your patterns reflect sacrifice, and that sacrifice pays in full. Maybe not today, maybe not this week, but it pays in pride, in confidence, in a physique no one can ignore, not because it's attractive, but because it speaks, because it reflects effort. It reflects resilience. It reflects pain turned into presence. And every time someone sees it, they're reminded what they gave up on. That's what they feel when they look at you. Not envy, not admiration. Reminder that they stopped when you didn't, that they broke when you bent, that they cracked when you sharpened. And that's why this will never be for everyone, because everyone wants it. Few demand it. Few require it from themselves. Few are willing to say, this is the only option. And even fewer will back it up with daily, precise, intentional, ruthless effort. But you do. You've proven it. And you'll continue proving it with every choice that costs you comfort, with every rep that hurts, with every meal that looks the same. Because while others are waiting for the right time, you're creating it. One decision at a time, one clean choice at a time. Not because it's easy, but because it's required. Because it's the only way to earn what they'll never understand. Because you don't just want change, you want mastery. And mastery demands more than most are willing to give. It demands everything. Every disciplined breath affirms dominance over hesitation. No longer are there pauses filled with indecision or moments lost to hesitation. Each second is governed, not felt. Autopilot doesn't run this path. Total engagement does. Most individuals navigate existence hoping things align. But alignment doesn't arrive by chance. It gets carved through deliberate elimination. Everything unnecessary gets purged. You shed distractions like snakes shed skin, not because it's fashionable, because it's lethal to your ascent. You're not collecting tools anymore. You've become one. The illusion of balance collapsed long ago. Those still juggling convenience and commitment lose quietly. Nobody hears excuses echoing in their own skulls, louder than the ones they whisper to themselves when nobody's watching. And you've annihilated the whisper. Where there once stood an internal dialogue, there's now command. Orders are issued. They're followed. Immediate compliance. Debate died long ago. External praise no longer registers. Compliments feel like static. You're tuned into a frequency higher than validation. What fuels this? A fire impossible to extinguish. Others use external triggers, songs, speeches, quotes, to stir momentum. You dig inward. You tap reservoirs untouched by the masses. Reservoirs built not on energy, but commitment embedded into your identity. This isn't a phase. It's fused into your DNA. There are no breaks. There's no finish line. There's recalibration, refinement, reinforcement. You don't reset. There's no such thing. You either maintain excellence or slip into mediocrity. There's no neutral. Movement occurs even while standing still, because standards continue to evolve even when the external output appears similar. That's the secret. The invisible escalation. From outside, the routine may look unchanged, but internally, intensity increases, precision sharpens, tolerance for anything less than exactitude vanishes. That's the divide. The ones chasing aesthetics get bored. They demand novelty. They crave fresh. You've developed an appetite for repetition. You're seduced by monotony. Why? Because the mundane is where mastery hides. Flashes fade. Flair burns out. But those who harness unchanging processes discover what others never will. Durability. You remember when discipline was effort. Now it's instinct. That shift wasn't sudden. It was earned. Through thousands of correct choices that nobody saw, through passing on opportunities that others labeled harmless, through waking up before alarms, finishing after others clocked out, showing up when nobody else did. And not one of those decisions felt extreme, because this is now baseline. Your normal would suffocate the average. Everything you're doing now, it started long before results arrived. That's what separates you. You didn't require proof before investment. You acted before certainty. You put in before any return was promised. You built your own evidence. There was no spotlight, no audience, just hours, days, months stacked in silence. You built in the dark what now gleams in daylight. People now speak of your luck, your genetics, your dedication as though they're interchangeable, but none of that created this. What built this wasn't special. It was brutal consistency. Routines forged when your body resisted. Choices upheld when cravings screamed. Systems followed even as motivation withered. When others would take the day, you doubled down. When emotions flared, you muted them. When fatigue surged, you turned mechanical. Not because you felt superhuman, but because you refused to feel weak. This refusal defines everything. It bleeds into each action, from the way you organize your hours, to the pace of each repetition, to the way you wake up. From the moment you sit up, nothing left to chance. Randomness doesn't live here. Spontaneity serves a function or it disappears. Because you've learned, flexibility breaks form and form dictates outcome. Transformation didn't demand another program. It required erasure of comfort, of rationalizations, of narratives inherited from a softer self. You didn't need more. You needed less. Less permission, less negotiation, less compromise. Your world narrowed. Focus, laser cut your environment. No wasted movement, no blurred lines, no clutter. Your life is now a blueprint. Every piece placed with intention, not merely for show, but for function. Optimization isn't a buzzword. It's the blood pumping through each plan you execute. How many mornings have you stood alone under cold water, heart pounding, reminding yourself, this is how edge is maintained? How many hours have passed where your muscles ached, not from reps, but from restraint? You train more with what you deny than with what you lift. You've mastered denial because you understand every yes dilutes, every no defines. The mirror doesn't impress you, it reports. And you read its report like a surgeon reads vitals, searching for deviation, tracking micro shifts. Because this isn't vanity, it's measurement. The body isn't decoration, it's evidence of governance, of adherence, of power earned, not inherited. The calendar is sacred, not because it's full, but because it's controlled. You don't react to the day, you design it. Every hour has a job. Idle time, eliminated. Leisure, strategized. You don't escape through rest, you recover through structure. And that recovery fuels the next cycle. Not a break, but a reload. How many nights have you sat in silence, exhausted yet unsatisfied, analyzing data others would ignore? Nutrition logs, volume charts, sleep patterns, all monitored, all optimized. Not because you're obsessed, but because obsession is simply focused, misunderstood by the unfocused. You once sought inspiration, now you generate it. Not through words, but through actions. Through the example you live. You walk into spaces differently. The way you carry silence demands attention, not because you speak loudly, but because your presence reflects substance. Earned presence, not borrowed. People talk about freedom. You operate with sovereignty. You don't seek freedom from discipline. You achieve liberation through it. Because without structure, chaos rules. And you've seen what chaos breeds. Stagnation, regret, backsliding masked as resting. You walk through stores immune to impulse. Past indulgences now irrelevant. You used to need to resist. Now you simply don't notice. Not because you're numb, but because you're selective. Your filter rejects anything beneath your level. That's what evolution does. It raises minimums, and yours are untouchable. Everything has a place. Every behavior exists to support outcome. There's no such thing as off track. There's only realignment. Because deviation isn't failure, it's feedback. But the gap between deviation and correction is where most crumble. You shorten that gap until it vanishes. Immediate adjustment, constant audit. That's the difference. You've become unrecognizable. Not because of physique, but because of posture, tone, discipline that permeates every detail. The way you prepare meals, the precision of your morning routines, the order of your environment. These aren't quirks, they're codes, embedded, unshakable. Those who used to know you might say you've changed, that you've become intense, that you're different. And they're right, you've evolved. You don't relate to chaos anymore. Conversations built on gossip or complaints now feel foreign. You gravitate towards silence or strategic speech, not because you're above anyone, but because your standards left orbit. You no longer apologize for high expectations. They're not demands, they're declarations of what you're unwilling to allow, of what you're no longer available for. Anything inconsistent with your trajectory gets denied. Without emotion, without drama, you move forward without friction, smoothly, sharply. Holidays don't derail you. Celebrations don't distract you. Social pressure doesn't sway you. Not because you're antisocial, but because you're mission-oriented. You don't explain your path anymore. You demonstrate it with your presence, with your choices, with your results. This path doesn't get easier. You just become stronger. The resistance doesn't reduce. Your threshold expands. What crushed you then wouldn't shake you now. Because you've forged resilience not through avoidance, but through confrontation. You've stood in front of your cravings, your fears, your fatigue, and stared them down, not once, daily. This isn't about abs or appearance. This is about self-ownership, command over tendencies, mastery over urges. The external, that's residue. The real prize is internal. The ability to control inputs regardless of noise. The inner calm in chaos. The unbreakable code in a world addicted to flexibility. You didn't find this path. You built it. Brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, decision after decision. And as others look on trying to guess your secret, they'll never quite see it clearly, because it's not what you do once. It's what you refuse to abandon forever. The morning offers no resistance. Before the sun's whispers reach the horizon, movement begins. Not for celebration, not for applause, but to reassert the claim made yesterday. This isn't return. This is continuation. The ground hasn't shifted, but your weight presses differently now. What once felt steep has become navigable terrain, shaped through absolute resolve, sculpted by untold decisions, invisible to spectators. Each action performed without exhibition is laced with one certainty: excuses dissolve in the presence of execution. Conversations have grown quieter, not due to withdrawal, but from heightened discernment. Words are no longer fillers, they're instruments. Each syllable carries weight or stays unspoken. The world may not notice silence's authority, but you do. And in this space, clarity dominates confusion. There's no hunger for validation, no chase for recognition. You understand deeply. Those who truly ascend rarely announce ascent. Noise belongs to the unsure. Precision belongs to the committed. Outside influences bounce harmlessly off your armor. Offers, distractions, temptations, once intriguing, now feel foreign. What's different isn't their persistence, it's your indifference. That immunity wasn't gifted. It was engineered, not by grand gestures, but by thousands of micro-decisions aligned under one unbreakable principle. Every behavior either reinforces direction or dismantles it. Comfort used to appeal. Now it signals danger. Not physical ease, but mental looseness. Where softness once offered shelter, now it represents risk. You've learned something most never will. Pleasant moments can breed complacency, so instead of drifting, you build friction, intend not to suffer, but to sharpen. Steel is born in flame, not shade. And you've made your mind a furnace. People still ask, how do you stay consistent? They don't realize it's not about remaining steady. It's about refusing deviation. It's not endurance. It's identity. The line separating occasional effort from permanent embodiment is thin but absolute. One side requires reminders, the other operates from memory. You crossed that boundary so long ago you barely remember needing motivation. This is no longer strategy, this is instinct. The system isn't complicated, it's just unrelenting. While others seek novelty to reignite their dwindling interest, you refine what's already proven. You don't need new methods every season, you need greater depth within existing ones. Depth that terrifies the uncommitted. Because once surface-level tactics lose novelty, only depth sustains progress. And you're buried in depth willingly. Meals are measured, not because of obsession, but because of respect. for what fuels you, for what empowers movement, for what supports dominion over weakness. You no longer negotiate nourishment, you command it. Even digestion reflects your standards. There's no room for compromise in intake when the outcome depends on precision. Environment isn't just aesthetic, it's tactical. Items, lighting, tools, everything around serves either utility or is removed. Nothing lingers without function. Why? Because clutter isn't harmless, it's erosion. Every piece of visual disorder drains micro needs of focus. You guard that focus with ferocity, aware it's your sharpest asset. Sleep isn't rest, it's recovery protocol. Scheduled, protected, tracked, not because you're obsessed with marginal gains, but because every fraction adds or subtracts. You honor every lever, no matter how minor. Because in your world, minor doesn't exist. Everything is either building or breaking. The faces around you have changed. That's not accidental. As your standards intensified, your proximity circle filtered. You didn't force separation. Your consistency did. Those who couldn't rise faded naturally, not because you rejected them, but because you outlasted their comfort zones. Excellence isolates. That's a cost. But in solitude, sovereignty is born. Social engagements happen sparingly, not due to disdain, but due to alignment. You don't fear gatherings, you evaluate them. Will they support trajectory or stall it? Most people fear missing out. You fear dilution. The wrong room isn't neutral, it's regressive. So you walk selectively. Not elitist, strategic. There's no chasing energy. You manufacture it through sleep regulation, through nutrient quality, through sunlight protocols, through movement rituals. You don't wait for alignment. You construct it. Where others crash and reset, you regulate and adapt. Crashes are signals. You intercept signals early. Goals, they were surpassed. Targets, replaced. Now, the drive comes not from dissatisfaction, but from discipline unattached to destination. You're not trying to arrive, you're committed to continuation. Infinite iteration, no final version, only perpetual refinement. Your schedule feels monotonous to outsiders. To you, it's orchestration. Every block plays a part in a grander rhythm. The rhythm builds dominance, not through dramatic crescendos, but through unwavering tempo, the same actions, the same intensity, daily. Because rhythm outlasts intensity. Spikes burn. Rhythm builds. Tracking is religion, not because of paranoia, but because feedback eliminates fantasy. Most people guess. You gather. Data over delusion. Each rep, calorie, metric, observed, analyzed, optimized. You're not living in speculation, you're leading through proof. Adversity doesn't alarm you. You've become fluent in friction. When discomfort shows up, you nod in recognition. That's not masochism. That's preparation. You've trained for volatility. While others flinch, you function. Crises don't derail you. They highlight your foundation. Pain has changed shape. It's no longer enemy. It's indicator. It shows boundaries. And you don't avoid boundaries, you hunt them. Because on the other side sits growth. Real growth. Not theory, not means. Physical, emotional, psychological evolution. Through hardship, not in spite of it. There's no bargaining. If the plan says execute, execution happens. Not after a warm-up, not when it feels convenient. Immediately, instant response. Reaction time between decision and action is non-existent. You've eliminated hesitation from your operating system. The delay that kills progress in others, you burn that bridge. Habits are steel chains, but not restraints. They're reinforcements. They hold structure intact. When storms come, and they always come, you don't scramble. You default to systems stronger than circumstance. While others pivot and pray, you act and dominate. Doubt? Processed, studied, eliminated. Not by affirmations, but by actions. You let proof erase uncertainty. When doubt creeps in, you introduce it to your calendar. When it sees your routine, it flees. There's no room for guesswork where execution lives. You don't rely on enthusiasm, it fades. You operate from conviction, which endures. The flame that carried others for a week, yours has raged for years. Not from fireworks, but from coals stoked daily. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. If injury comes, adjustments follow. No victimhood, just recalibration. The identity doesn't fracture. The method might shift, but the mission holds. Unshaken. You don't see setbacks, you see variations, because objectives remain unchanged. Weather isn't an excuse. It's irrelevant. Heat, cold, rain, conditions change, commitments don't. Because your process doesn't belong to external elements. It belongs to internal governance. The only forecast that matters is your resolve, and it's unchanging. You don't live in hope. You move in certainty, not because everything's guaranteed, but because you've removed reliance on chance. You've built systems immune to variability. Your outputs don't fluctuate. Your approach doesn't bend. This version of you isn't popular. It's potent. It doesn't inspire applause. It commands respect, silently. You don't ask to be noticed. Your results make the announcement. You don't promote effort, you embody it. And while many will never understand what drives this engine, that's fine. Understanding isn't the goal. Execution is. You didn't come here for recognition. You came here to master yourself daily. And that mission hasn't paused for applause once. This isn't about abs. It's about command, about doing what must be done every single day, without question, without noise, without failure. Ruthless isn't a word, it's a standard, and you've made it your default.